everyone. Welcome to today's session, Key Strategies to Building Partnerships. It's so good to see some familiar faces, some familiar names, not faces yet. We'll start the session. I'm sure as people come in, they can catch up. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Shami, and I am the network catalyst at Pollinate Impact. Pollinate Impact is a member-driven network of social impact incubators and accelerators in the global South. We empower and resource these impact enablers so that they can better support the entrepreneurs in solving the world's biggest challenges. And we do this around three main pillars, which is access to funding, talent, and shared tools and resources. Capacity building, donor engagement sessions, like the Ask Me Anything sessions or Perfect Your Pitch to funders, and reducing information asymmetry by sharing weekly curated grant and funding opportunities with our members. These are some ways that we are addressing the access to funding challenge, right? So this capacity building exercise, and I don't know if you have attended one of our previous ones, which was Introduction to Proposal Writing, and there's one coming up which is on CSR engagement. So these are some ways that we are trying to build capacity around the donor engagement topic. Now, some of these benefits are exclusively for our members. So if you would like to know more about our membership, I encourage you to go through our website, email us. I'll be sharing our email IDs once I hand it over to Aru. Now, getting into today's session, we all understand that getting funding is not just one-time game. It's not just responding to one proposal and waiting for it to come through. It requires a long-term strategic approach in cultivating these strong relationships with the funders, which in turn leads to strong partnerships. So to walk you through these strategies, today we are joined by Aru David from AssistAsia. He's based in Vietnam, but he's just let me know that he's in Thailand right now. So he's joining us from Thailand. And AssistAsia has been our wonderful partner, helping us curate our weekly grant and funding opportunities for our members. And for those of you who've been receiving them, you know how wonderful it is to receive that in your inbox every Thursday. So before we dive into this session, if you've been to our session before, you know what's coming. We usually begin with a check-in question or a check-in series. So I'm going to share my screen, and Ayana here has been kind enough to offer to paste the to put in the Menti poll and code and the link in the chat. So you can please either click on the link or go to menti.com and enter the code 82344156. I'm going to share my screen and we are going to go from there. So just give me a second while I figure this out. So the holiday season is already starting, which is why we are having a recording of this session in case people aren't able to join today. Sorry, give me a second. All right, here we go. Just let me know if you're able to see the screen.
Yeah.
All right. So for our first one, this is, what is your most daunting challenge when it comes to cultivating strong relations with funders? And I already see some great responses. Yes, relationship building, which is the crux of what we are going to talk about today. Building your credibility, creating a rapport. Wonderful. Yes. These are, I think this is the crux of our discussion today. Any more responses? And you can keep adding to this. And for those of you, if you're just joining us, we're going through our check-in. If you can just go to menti.com and use this code 82344156, or if you go to our chat, there is a direct link to this check-in. Not knowing where to start. Yes, getting that introduction, finding the right partner who aligns with you. Absolutely. All right. So, excuse me. So let's move on. Yeah, you're free to respond as you as we move on. You're free to stay and respond to this question. Let's move on. So this is which country are you joining us from? So Pollinate Impact, our priority areas or our focus areas are the Global South. So basically Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia and Southeast Asia. So we'd like to know where you're joining us from. I'm in the US. I'm in New Jersey, so it's not bright yet. It's early out here. It's still 6 in the morning. Um, all right, South Africa. We know Aru is joining us from Thailand,
Thailand. Yep.
Kenya. All right, Philippines. Wonderful, wonderful. I'm glad to see the representation. All right. Again, what best describes your organization? Pollinate Impact is a network of impact incubators and accelerators, but these sessions, we have seen, other types of organizations as well. So we'd like to know, how you identify yourselves, whether it's an incubator, it's a community hub, is it, are you an investor or a funder? And if you recognize, if you do not find yourself and if you identify as an other, then please let us know in the chat what kind of organization you are. Academic institution and an incubator and accelerator. All right, great. Please keep responding. Again, the code is on your screen or in the chat. A membership network. All right, I'm going to move on in the interest of time, and I do really want to pass it on to Aru. So this will kind of lead into the session, and we will touch upon this topic. Aru is going to be talking more about this, but let's see what's one strategy that you have utilized to build credibility with funders, right? And we will talk about more as the session progresses, but what's some strategies that you have used that's worked for you to build credibility with funders? Or maybe you're saying, hey, that's what we came here to learn. Is this sometimes Mentimeter doesn't let you type in, so I just wanted to make sure that you're able to type. So yes, okay. An internal impact report. Managing the financial resources and being transparent. Yeah. All right. I think it's a right segue into the topic at hand. I am going to stop sharing and invite Aru to please introduce yourself, or I'll leave this up for a little bit, right? And oops, I'll leave this up for a little bit in case there is other entries that come in. And meanwhile, I would like to invite Aru to please introduce yourself and your work, and then we'll delve into the session.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Shami, for the introduction. And yeah, thank you for all those answers. It gives me a little bit of insight into your level of understanding on the topic, and also which organizations you represent. Um, Firstly, some logistics. I hope I'm audible, and I'm actually, doing this training session from a hotel. So if there's some audio or Wi-Fi connections, please, if you're not able to hear me, I think Aliana, please just send me a message, maybe through our internal Slack channel or some way. If I keep talking and you're not able to hear me, yeah, just let me know. But otherwise, I hope I'm audible, right? So thank you everyone for joining in, and I am Aru David. You can call me Aru, ARU, and I am the regional director of Assist, and I've been with Assist for almost like 15 years now, and I'm based in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and I head the what we call the regional office, which is called Mekong region, right? So it covers some of the ASEAN countries like Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, Myanmar, those countries. I'm also the global head for private sector partnerships, which is a division within Assist, where we engage actively with private companies and implement development projects. Um, so I think overall, just to give you a perspective, I think you all know Assist maybe, or just because Joshua, he mentioned he did the last training, and I'm not sure if most of you attended that last training in November. Assist is an international NGO and a nonprofit. So I'm purely speaking from an NGO perspective, but it very well applies. My experience on donor engagement definitely applies to the incubators, accelerator, any organizations. It could be universities. The approach to grant funding can be from any organizations, right? So, but I'm purely telling my experience from an NGO perspective. Especially we say funding here, I just want to be clear. Sometimes it's misunderstood. Funding here is mostly we're talking about grant opportunities, grant money from donor organizations. So grant is something which you get, right? You receive and you're just spending that money. You don't have to. It's not a loan. It's not a debt. It's a grant money for pure social or environmental purpose. So so that's what I'm going to talk about. So the donors I'm going to talk about are the donors who provide grant funding. I think because Joshua mentioned that he talked about proposal writing, and I think all of you are receiving regularly the list of funding opportunities from various donors, right? So, and yeah, for me, I've been doing this donor engagement activities, donor relationship building for the past 15 years. And yeah, there are several key donors. So I would like to share a lot of examples as we go through. But I think there's going to be a question and answer session at the end after about a 60 minutes presentation from my side. I think you can note down your questions. During the presentation, I'll be just also showing some examples. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a brief introduction about myself. I'm from India, from South India, from Chennai, and but most of my work experience is in Southeast Asia. I've been in Assist head office in the Philippines for some time. Then I moved to Malaysia. Then I settled in Vietnam since 2007. I've been based in Vietnam running Assist operations. Yeah, so I think that's a brief introduction about myself. So I think we'll jump into the topic of today. I'll be using a presentation just to, guide our discussion points. Just let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes,
Okay,
we
so I
can.
think you're able to see. Okay, right. So I think the objective is to talk about donor engagement. How do we do it? So I think some of the important agenda items or discussion items we'll be covering today. So basic introduction to donor engagement. Why is it important to engage with donors? Types of donors, we could look at them. Scoping donors, how do we, do the scoping of donors? Donor mapping, there's going to be a tool on donor mapping and donor prioritization session tools, which I'll share with you. Third comes next, the key part is the donor engagement process. How do we do it? There was a lot of questions asked. How do you start, getting introduced? How do you start a conversation? How do you build the rapport with the donors? So I think we are going to cover that in third, and then partner engagement strategies. I think we'll be discussing on that. I think we were talking about reputation. So how do you manage your reputation? So I think those are the 5 items we'll be covering. So let me just start with introduction to the donor engagement, right? So I just use the slides just for my, for my bullet points on what I can speak on, but I'll be mostly sharing my experience. So I know the donor world is quite big. I mean, it's huge. The amount of funding and grants available is enormous, and there's so many donors. There's so many opportunities out there. But we need to. Many are successful. Many other NGOs or other organizations, they're not successful. They're not able to raise funds. While there are so many opportunities out there, right? How I see is, there's a lot of donors sitting and waiting for project ideas and proposals. On one side, they don't know how to spend the money. There's a lot of money allocated, but they don't receive good proposals. On the other side, we have organizations like us wanting more grants. Know them, but we don't know like why we are not successful. So that's where this donor engagement becomes very important, right? So just going it, why is it important to engage with donors? Yeah. Typically for organizations, for nonprofits, for NGOs, donor engagement is the foundation of your organization relationship with your current and potential donors. So I think that's the key foundation. So for your current existing donors and then your future potential donors, I think that engagement process is very important. And Assist, for example, our organization has grown year on year just because of this donor engagement activity. If we don't do that, the organizations who depend on donor funds might collapse, or they may not. I mean, they will cease operations because they want funds to run the organizations, right? So it's very important. So for your relationship with the donors, I think the engagement activities is a key. So I think you need to establish a long-term relationship with donors, and donors who are consistently engaged will actively keep in touch with your organization and will remain willing to support your projects. So I think those are key reasons why it is important to engage with donors. Uh, just to share you examples from my side. In fact, in 2007, we started meeting one donor, yeah, which is called a KFWDEG, which is based out of Germany. So there were questions asked, how do you start this, introduction? How do you start this initial catch up, we never knew this donor until 2007, but now, as of date, they're one of our key donors, and who most of the assist funding comes from that single donor for the past 15 years. But all this started with a relationship back in 2007, where we got first introduced. We don't know the donor, but we had a private partner and we had a project with them. in Vietnam. So we had this project in Vietnam with a private partner, and Assist was in partnering with that private company based in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. And the donor actually gave the fund to the private company. Yeah. We also need to understand that sometimes you need to form consortia to access funds. You may not be eligible to apply for that fund, but maybe you can form consortia to access the fund, because sometimes the donor says the fund is only for NGOs, the fund is only for universities, the grant is only for private companies sometimes. But in that case, you should not ignore that. Instead of, even if you are a incubator, accelerator, you're not eligible, but you may need to find ways to still access that fund by forming partnerships. That's very important. So just to say the story, yes, we had this private partner because we were not directly eligible to get that fund, but we were able to get through that private partner. And so myself, I was involved in that project, and the donor came to visit the project site. And so casually with the private partner, I asked him, okay, can we, we officially met in the office because we are part of that project. But then we just asked the private, but can you introduce us to that donor? Of course, we exchanged business cards, and the donor was there. That's the first time the donor is knowing us, because we are not the direct contracting party. But we were curious to understand a little bit more about this donor. So the same day, we just sent an email, because the donor is from Germany. She's in Vietnam. She could be in any of the countries where you are. So that's an opportunity, because they're down here. It's difficult to meet them in the head office, but at least you meet them here. So it was a casual dinner. We met them. We kind of introduced us what we do, and we got to understand better what they're doing. Then we realized there's a big opportunity available with that particular donor, not just through this private company, but we got to understand them more when we met in person. Of course, I know it takes some time and courage but we need to go ahead and start, initiating that initial engagement of meeting, personally connecting is very important. And since we know them, then we started to apply for several grants with the donor with different private companies, because they only fund private companies. We are an NGO. So we started to set up private partnerships and ask our private partner to apply. And we always kept informing this key donor representative that we are applying a fund with this particular company, that company. And we started to have close relationships. We started to have email exchanges, calls with the donor. And every time she comes down to Vietnam, we try to catch up. And slowly we build that relationship. And that also, and all the projects we implemented was running well, it did well. So we also built that credibility. And they've been our key donors for past 15 years. And we started off with one project where we got 200,000 euro grant. But with the same donor, as of now, we have about close to 80 plus project and close to about $16 million of euro actually of actual contract we made through that particular single donor. And so I think emphasizing the third point, when you keep engaged with them, they really want to support you. They want to help you. There are several donors you might want to try. Sometimes you lose it. Even today, we try several donors whom we have not engaged or we don't have any relationship with. We just know them in black and white in the internet. We keep submitting proposals, but we don't win. I think you all know you are in business. It's all about personal relationship connections. Do I know you? So, that's very important. To start that, we need to have active engagement. So I think that's the importance of engagement. Another example I can share with you is, I think you all know a donor called P4G. Recently, it's called Partnership for Green Growth and Global Goals. It's managed out of US from the World Resource Institute. Recently, they call for proposals for startups, especially social impact startups. So there was a call for proposal. there we need to form consortium, right? Ever since this P4G started, I think we first applied and we won one project, and that was because our private partner had good relationship, which was a Danish company. They had a good relationship with the donor. So then I knew, okay, I need to approach them. It's better we work with that particular donor so we get to know the donor. So through that private partner, we got the first P4G project. And then I started to, when they came for the project site, I started to discuss with them. They start to know us. We meet them in regular P4G summits around the world. And now we know the topmost level of P4G leaders. And so they know Assist. They know us by name. So every time they apply, we always win. Every year they call for proposals, we applied and we win. And now we have built that credibility. It's also because of that engagement, right? So that is why I think it's important to engage with donors. Without engagement, if you just know them name, I think you're receiving a lot of list of donors, funders from Joshua. You submit in a proposal, you may not win. Sometimes you're lucky you win. Um, but I think the key is to, if you really want to win, we need to find the donors and start engaging with them. I think that's the importance of engagement with donors. In this slide, I would like to talk about type of donors, who are the different types of donors. So I would say I would largely put it into 5 categories. There are multilateral donors. These are donors set up by, so these are all donor organizations. Yeah, this is not individual donors. So I'm talking about organizations. So these are organizations set up by group of countries. For example, it could be the UN agency is a multilateral, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, that could be the African Development Bank. These are called multilateral donor agencies. Then there is like bilaterals. There's a donor organization of a particular country working with another country. For example, USAID, it's the US government's donor agency, right? Then there's GIZ from Germany. The other one is KFWDJ, I was talking about. JICA is from Japan, Japan International Cooperation Agency, KOICA from Korea. So each country has its own organization which manages the donor funding from that particular country, right? So they are called bilateral agencies. These are all government entities. Then if you go to the row below, there is corporates, there's foundations, there's family offices. So look at corporate, these are private companies. They do have large sum of money as part of their philanthropy. Yeah. Assist, for example, we have projects with many private companies who are funding us. Example could be like Schneider Electric from France. We have several projects with them. Cargill, for example, from US. JP Morgan Chase. Like these big private companies, they give plenty of money in form of donations and grants. Then there's foundations, which is basically some of the companies, private companies would set up their own foundation and they would start focusing only on, social environmental projects. So we've been working with several foundations in around the globe, mostly European company foundations. L'Oreal Foundation, for example, they work mostly on women-centered projects. Then there's Schneider Electric Foundation. There is Grundfos Foundation from Denmark. So there are several other foundations, could be a type of donor. Then family offices. So these are high net worth individuals, some of the big billionaires of the world. They have their own, it's not the company money, but they have, as a person, they have a lot of wealth and they want to give a lot of charity money. And, they need an office to manage that. individually, a wealthy person cannot do everything. So they have something called family offices who also give out lot of donations and grants, right? So these are different types of donors, we can say. And I think in terms of engagement, it becomes a little bit easier with the bottom three: corporates, foundations, family office, because these are very private, right? So you can easily start engaging them and they're willing to be engaged. But with multilateral and bilaterals, it would be a little bit difficult. But I'm not saying it's not possible, because, as I said, the German donor is a bilateral, it's a government entity. We start to engage with them. P4G is, again, it's a government funded organization. So it's challenging, but it is still possible to have active engagement with them. Yeah. In terms of scoping of donors, it's very important exercise I think we need to do before even we start the engagement activity. Yes, with your existing donors, if you have donors, you need to keep active engagement activities, right? So that's very important. But for new donors, if you're new to the space, uh, how do we start and where do we start? I think there was a question, where do we start? It's important to, scope the donor, because there's so many donors out there, and we really need to prioritize, scope the donors whom we need to target and start engagement activities, because engagement activities is going to be expensive. It's a cost. You need to put in your time, you need to put in your resources, visits, dinners, flights. So there's going to be a lot of cost for engagement activities. And you need to budget some, some budget amount. Internally within us, we call it as representation, right? And we put a big budget for that, for partnership, relationship building. How much we're going to spend, you need to do that. So it's important to scope the donors. So scoping, I think it depends on, you need to start understanding the donor motivation, and then you need to target the right donors, where there's an alignment with your work, what you're trying to do. For example, you're in the field of working with farmers, for example. Am I targeting the right donor who has the same motivation? Or I'm trying to work with women or children, or I'm working on health. So we need to understand, is there an alignment between the donor motivation and our interest? So that's very important. So ensure, number one, your organization goals and the goals of the donor align or overlap. That's very important to any of the donors there. What I talked about, different types of donors, I think this is very important. One of the key element in scoping your donor, or finding which donors should we target. Donors do seek a return of their investment, would like to support in a more personal way. So you need to see what is their interest, what is their motivation, what are their expectations, why are they funding this much money, and so we need to understand that. So we need to, for targeting the right donors, we need to find, does the donor organization have what we want? Are they supporting our cause? In the same topics, that's what I call cause. So, and also, are they supporting, because the fund can be for different purpose. Sometimes they only provide funds for technical assistance, capacity building. They may not provide fund for infrastructure or equipment. So we need to look at those. And then we need to do the scoping of our donors. In terms of assessing risk, yeah, I think different donors have different, acceptance of risk. Some donors are willing to fund any innovative programs, but some are very, they want to just go with tried and tested programs. So there might be, you might have applied for grants. I'm not sure if you applied, but there are sometimes we lose. In fact, for Assist, I think our success rate is, out of 100 proposals we apply, we may win about, say, 15 to 20. even shortlisting stage, and then the actual grant might be only 10%. So, but sometimes we want to approach innovative idea, but maybe the donor is not interested. That doesn't mean your proposal is not good. It's just that it didn't work. um, and you always need to review the donor guideline. They would, before a call for proposal, they give you a guideline, and then we need to review that carefully to assess if the donor organization willing to support innovative or untried programs, right? What we are trying to propose. That's also very important in assessing the risk before you start even engagement with the donors. Okay, so here are some of the tools which we might use um, for donor mapping. We normally do a donor mapping is very important because there are so many donors out there. So I think we need to somehow do this exercise instead of random ad hoc, giving it a shot at every single donor. I think you need to do this exercise of finding the list of donors, donor type. There are so many columns there, which you might need to get information. All the information is available over the internet. You just need to do a research and kind of prepare a donor mapping, right? So in this case, you can see, yes, donor name, type, um, who's the account manager of the donor, if there is a name, so that you can start engaging with that person, start contacting that person. There might be some details in the website. So yeah, specific budget, if they have a grant amount, and what areas do they support, that is very important because it needs to be aligned with your area. So whether they support livelihood, climate change, wash area, disaster risk response, gender health, social protection, governance. There's so many areas, right? I mean, it's some examples, but we could go on in development sector. There's a lot of focus area. So we need to look at that. Specific geographic interest of the donor, right? We are all from different geographies. So I'm more interested in donors who could support Asia or ASEAN, for example, right? You could be interested in sub-Saharan Africa or Africa, for example, South Asia. Funding cycle. So whether they are doing 1 year, one call for proposal, or is it every quarter they call for proposal, or is it open? You can apply anytime you can apply for. So that's very important information. Average grant size. What is the size they provide? Like 200,000 euro to 1 million euro is a size, for example. Some could be in the range of $100,000 euro. Are you willing to go for it? Key contractual requirements, if any, they would say that you must have a example, you must be in operation for 5 years, you must have a minimal annual revenue uh, of 1 million, 2 million euro. There might be several conditions. We need to look at it. So I think those are information you may need to collect, right? So for me, as a head of private sector partnership, right, I need to work with private companies and I need to access funds, grants, which will actually support private companies. So for example, I looked at grant funding list of donors who actually support private companies. So if I could share with you one example. So this is a matrix which we prepared. This is the 2023 we call private sector partnership matrix. Let me just share the screen. So I think maybe you're able to see the screen here. So yeah, so this is an example of donors and what information I need before I start targeting, right? So I put the grant or donor name. I put in deadlines of how often they call for funds quarterly. Some has no deadline, category 2. Some have specific deadlines. Then I look at The thematic areas they focus on. Example here, what I highlight is education. So there's like a lot of thematic areas here, or the focus areas. Some are focusing on resource and clean energy, for example. Right? What is the minimum grant they give? What is the maximum grant size? What should be the typical project duration size? When are the deadlines for this submission of proposals? Who could be the lead applicant? Very important. And that is where it is important of forming consortia. Um, Several times, several organizations just give up because they think they are not eligible for that grant. You might be receiving a lot of grant opportunities from Joshua, and you might see, if you go into the guidelines, detailed requirements, they would say only a private company can apply, or an NGO can apply, or a university can apply. But if you think you are still eligible and that area is interesting for you, I would recommend you form a partnership with eligible applicant, right? That's very important. Eligible countries. So I'm interested in, if it is listed Asia, I'm just listed in, I'm interested in those. And from here, I'm able to do a clear shortlisting of which donor should I contact, which donor should I build relationship with. For example, if I find some of the donors, their grant funding is very small for our size. If I want to say I want to target $200,000 and above, then I ignore whoever provides lesser than that, right? So, and then is there repeat funding possible? So that, because when you want to build relationship, when you want to have active engagement, you need to do it with donors who would do repeat, so that you can get year after year or cycles, right? So this is just one example of a PSP matrix which we created. It's called private sector partnership, where I want to focus on donors who fund private companies who do development projects, right? And Assist, we are experienced in that area, so we want to leverage that and go for more. So we create this every year. We create this. We update this particular sheet. Yeah. So this is just one example of trying to do a proper scoping, trying to find which donors do you need to target and start the engagement process with. Yeah. In the list I showed you, I think we have active engagement with at least close to 10 donors. Some donors we tried to reach out, they did not respond. We keep on emailing. We somehow try to find the contacts, reach out. We meet their people close by. For example, they are all present in Europe or US. We are not able to go and meet there, but we find if they have a local office in the region, maybe in Asia region, could be in Thailand, could be in Singapore regional office. Can we go and meet them in person? There's nothing wrong in going and meeting and talking about your company. That's okay. Through that particular meeting, you might get another opportunity, even if they are not interested in engaging with you, right? But I think we need to start that scoping, prioritizing, and then start your engagement activity. So let me just continue with the slide. Let me go to the screen share again. Okay, so I think we were in this donor mapping, and an example, right? Donor prioritization matrix. Okay, so once you did that donor kind of scoping or matrix already, what I showed you, you could prioritize among the chosen 10 donors. Which one do you want to prioritize? It's basically a decision analysis making, right? So it's a decision matrix. So you could list down all your donors here and then put in the criteria and give it a weightage, and then you could rate and then say, okay, this donor seems to be the most important. I need to find a way to start engaging with them. So there could be different type of criterias, right? So these are some list of criterias. History of funding in your country, very important. If I'm interested in, I'm based in Kenya, I'm looking at this donor, have they funded in Have they funded projects in Kenya? Are they doing a lot of initiatives? Then I think, okay, this is very important. I need to start. I'm based in Kenya, so I need to approach them for sure. Volume of grants. Are they giving small grants, $10,000, $20,000? Is it really important to put in a lot of time, effort there, right? You need to think about it. Potential size. Requirement for co-financing is very important. Some donors might ask a co-financing amount. Okay, I'll fund you, 200,000, but you need to put in 25% of that amount as co-financing. So you need to look at that. There's a lot of topic. You could ask me what is co-financing, how could we do it, but I will keep it for a separate session given the time limitation. I could go into each of this particular criteria, right? So to kind of prioritize your donor. I think another one we can use here is this is a Boston Consulting Group matrix. It's about your value versus potential. You put it in this kind of a table, and you will know there are some donors. Their value is very less, and the potential is also very low. So you may need to, when I say potential, is that, if they have the chance of winning and also repeat, do they have the opportunity to fund repeatedly? So that's your potential. So you need to put them in this particular matrix and then see who's your rising star, who's your cash cow, who's your low priority, and some you have some question marks. Do you really need to approach them or not? Yeah. So if you look at the rising star, they have high potential, high value. Therefore, it's definitely worth investing a lot of time in engaging this donor in this category. Yeah. So for me, I would rate T4G for me is a rising star for Assist, at least for us. And then I would rate KFWDG as a rising star for us. Then I would rate some of the private companies, which I listed and told you they're all rising stars for me. Example, Schneider Electric, starting from 2015 onwards, they've been almost giving us a lot of close to a 1 million euro funding. So I would put them there. Cash cows, yes, the value is high, but your trial takes a lot of effort to win, right? So that's on the cash cow side. So I think you can also prioritize in this way apart from what you saw in the previous. So there's different way of prioritizing and identifying which donor should we do proper engagement, right? There are donors you can keep on trying, but engagement leads to results. And it's very important to engage donors. Otherwise, your success rate for winning those is very limited. So, okay, so the donor engagement. So I think we talked about scoping, prioritization, right? Now I'll go into the donor engagement process. How do we do it? So I think typically we follow Assist, we follow this 4C. I think it's a framework which we have. I think it can be applicable to anyone. You could have more steps, but at least within Assist, this is how we do. The first is contact, connect, and then we have communicate and collaborate. So I think this is how we start doing the engagement process. So contact, I think it's more about, we do the following activities. We do the research of donors. We find who are we gather a lot of information about that particular donor. We identify potential point of contact within the donor. We create a database, and then we start to send out emails. Now that you have list of donors, you identify the potential contact, we might send out email. I think it's best way to initially, if you have not met them in an event or in person, you don't know them, it's good to send out an email and if they respond, now we are living in a world after COVID situation, making online meetings is becoming very common. Wherever they are, you can still meet them. So I think at least we start with connecting them through online meetings, wherever whichever part of the world they are, we at least start engaging in that way. So I think that's the contacting part, what you do. Of course, you use the whole, Excel sheets. Sometimes you use CRM softwares. For Assist, we use HubSpot. I don't know if it's similar to Salesforce. It gives you a database management contacts, and you can manage the entire relationship using a software. So we are using HubSpot to store all this into database. Instead of just Excel, we store it there. It's easy for emailing out. Um, then is the next stage is connecting. So contacting, you might contact around, say, 200 donors, for example. Um, and then only a few might respond, say 50 or 25%. And then you start, if they reply, then you start to respond to emails. Then you do kind of a little bit pre-meeting research. I think at the connect stage, you already have a meeting. It could be an in-person meeting, or it could be a Zoom or any online meeting for you. You schedule a meeting, and then you start introducing about yourself. So it's an introductory meeting. So when you do an introductory meeting, you need to have a very good profile about yourself. You need a very good presentation, what you're doing, so that you're able to present. Um, because you know that this donor is a little bit aligned to your activities, so you speak the language of the donors, what is their interest area. So I think that's very important to do the initial connection through a meeting. And then you start communicating after that. After the initial introductory meeting, then you start regular communications, right? This process is going to be a long up and down process. They might share with you some of the donors. If you go private companies, they might just say, this is our focus area. Example, education is a focus area. They would just ask you to send a proposal. So you develop a master concept framework, MCF. And if you are in a consortia, you might want to share it with your partners and align, and before you apply, right? Then you directly make the application to the donor. Some of the donors, they have strict deadlines for submission of proposals. You need to follow it. Some may not have. So you can just submit a proposal anytime. So that's on the communication step. Communicating, it will be up and down several follow-up meetings. And finally, is collaboration, is where you are almost in the contracting stage, and then you do the project implementation. So I think at every stage there is a lot of engagement activity going on with the donor. But the moment you win a contract, there's an even more lot of opportunities to create this engagement with the donor, right? So because you have a project with them and you are regularly in touch with them for implementation and updates. So these are typical, I would say, a framework, which way I would say, yeah, contact, connect, communicate, and collaborate. We just want to keep it simple with 4 Cs. Okay, I think this is my last session module here. It's about partner engagement strategies and tools. Some of the tools I already talked about, mapping and donor prioritization already. So let's talk about some clear engagement strategies, right? So communication is very important. And I think CNV is very communication and visibility is very important. So Assist, we do emphasize a lot on communication and visibility activities. We have a separate team for communication. There may be a lot of work you're doing, but you need to find a way. How do you do your CNV activities? Yeah. And you also need to have personalizing communication with the donors are made possible by automation CRM, but I think doesn't work nowadays. Related to chat. For example, for me, some of the donors I have connection with, I try to use different chat. It could be a WhatsApp for somebody. It could be a different tool like a Skype could be for some donors. emails. Some would be only interested in calls. So you do have this personalized communication also with the donors, right? So that's very important. So a successful communication strategy when it comes to communication visibility, I think this is very important. Impact focused storytelling is very important. So every project you implement, you need to talk about impact, and it needs to talk about the impact results you are creating. Could be environment, it's about greenhouse gas reduction, how much percentage, how much if it is a waste management, how much tons of waste was recovered, recycled those, or if you're helping women, how much percentage of income level increase for those women, or there was a job opportunity created. So you need to talk about it. So I think there needs to be a clear way of communicating impact through your, for example, in Assist, we have something called quarterly newsletter. Yeah, I can show you some examples later. The newsletter is a quarterly newsletter where we talk about all our projects and the impacts it has created. We create videos about a particular beneficiary. If it's a children, if it's a health related project, we ask the beneficiary, how did they benefit out of this project? We create short videos. So that's very important. So that the donor is impressed that their money has, really impacted the needy people. Regular progress update is very, very important. This is an important tool Assist use as part of our project management. When we get the donor fund and when we have to implement the project, you need to make sure that the donor is updated. You can't stay out of touch or with no communication. Even if you have project issues, you need to communicate and be transparent to the donors about. You may want to have it. The best way is to have a regular monthly meeting or at least quarterly meeting and update the project as professional as possible using a presentation, provide project updates. Opportunity for the donors to participate in the conversation. So you must also create chances of where the donors can be part of the project, right? For example, inviting the donor representative for the project launch, or could be asking them to speak in an event of your project. So I think those kind of, it's people like to speak, they like to be appreciated. So when you call them, that creates a little bit of connection and engagement. Some people think it's not needed, but it's very, very important. So I think so these are some of the key criteria for a successful communication strategy when it comes to the donors, especially who provides grants. Yeah. So different approaches. There could be emails, telephone calls, videos I talked about. Whenever we shoot a video about a project, we just share it with the donor. You don't need to wait until the end report. I have to send in the end report. Whenever you do, even you are in an event related to your project, you take a lot of selfies, you take a picture, you can share it with your donor that I'm doing this. There could be project brochures where you try to create visibility for the donor. It's very important. Apart from your own organization visibility, I think you need to acknowledge the donor with their logos on the brochures. Annual reports, visit your organization office. You should encourage them to visit your office, come and see your office, what you're doing. We do it, unless you ask, you don't get it. If you ask them, they will be willing to come and visit. If they're down in, for example, in Kenya, South Africa, they're there for a particular visit, some other business trip, you might just want to tell them, why don't you drop by our office? So just for 30 minutes, 1 hour, that creates after they come to the office, they see what you're doing, they may get more knowledge about you. And it has happened to us several times. We make sure our donors visit our office. And yes, invitation of donors and potential donors to the events, our events or the project events is very important. So these are all very good engagement strategies which Assist we have used, and we have been very successful in donor engagements. Yeah. We talked about reputations. I think it's very important. So on reputation side, I think it's about good project implementation. When we get the projects, we need to make sure we do a good job on the project, manage within cost, within timeline as much as possible. If there is delays, keep the donor communicated and informed, right? So I think that's very important. And you need to have clear, good references when you want to engage with the donor, especially new donors. You need to have all type of projects you've done, reference projects, um, case studies of projects before you present to them. So I think that's very important. When you want to build credibility with your donors, you need to have good communication, C&V materials. You need to have project references which you can share with them readily if they ask you, so that you need to have a complete profile of yourself. I know many organizations, they've done a lot, but they don't know how to package it in a way that your donor is able to trust in you. It's not about just speaking, but you need to document it, share it with them. Is very important. So in terms of retaining your donors, I think you need to know your donors and their intent regarding investing in social cause. So you need to understand for what purpose they are funding, and you need to share impact results with them related to that. Is very important. So have real engagement with the donors by including them in your project, technical or policy issues. Ensure that your donor fund project is managed well. I think that's the most important. Some people, they mess it up with the first project. That's it. You totally lost the trust and credibility with your donor. You can't engage with them further. It's going to be very difficult if you have to. So I think that's the most important. Project management and project management process reporting is very important. Share success stories and impacts of the donors who fund, and then acknowledge that the donors contribution through your organization's publication. So this is about the newsletter. You need to acknowledge the donors' contribution, talk about them. I think these are key ways to retain your donors. It's not about just always, handshake and dinners and lunch, but they also need to see your work and what you're doing. So updating them, communicating to them often is quite important. Yeah. Handling donor rejections, and yeah, I think not that you win with everybody. There are sometimes you may not win a particular proposal, but you can always reach out to them and say, why did we lose this proposal? Can you give us some insights? And then definitely they're willing to consider, and they know that you are interested, you're keen. So I think rejections, it happens and you need to accept, but you need to contact them again. What are the other opportunities available? Yeah. So I think that's also one of the way of engagement strategy. So I'll stop here, but I just wanted to, I was telling that I will share some examples. So for example, I just wanted to show some of our I think donor engagement events. I just want to share with you some of the pictures where we did a proper donor engagement activity. Yeah. So let me show you some examples. Okay, so I think this is one of our project funded by the KFWDEG, and this is an event. This was a opening event. So, you can see myself, my boss there, my colleagues, and that's the donor attending, and we invite them to speak in the events. It's a great time. You get a lot of opportunity when you invite them. They're only focused on you. You have a lot of time, attention to show your credibility, your organization's capability, your colleagues, right? It's very important they know. So it's a speaking event. I have a lot of photos here, but you can see her speaking. She's from KFWDEG. That's where I started the relationship with this particular lady here, and putting their logos and inviting them to speak. Myself speaking there. It's an opening event, so you acknowledge the importance of the donor. So I think that could be one way. If I can show you, in fact, I just wanted to share with you this some of the newsletters Assist have. So this is our regular newsletter, which we prepare on a quarterly basis, which is called Assist Now, and then we share it with all our donors. In fact, I share anything written on this. If there is a story related to that particular donor, we send to them through even WhatsApp, or email. You just say that in this page we have mentioned about you and your contributions. So, so some of our partners in the previous quarters, for example, Shell, Eagle Kemp, FL Schmid, Wiesem Simmons. So we do mention them and we write stories about them. So this is a quarterly newsletter I was mentioning. Yeah. This is a Belgium delegation from Belgium Parliament in Vietnam. We write about it. Of course, they came and met. We share this with them. Whether they read it or not, at least we mentioned at this page, we have mentioned you. People are happy about it. So I think those are a few examples I just wanted to share on what I was talking. Yeah. Okay, I think I exceeded my time, but I'm open to any question. Yeah, 1 hour is not sufficient for me to talk about this topic. I can keep talking, but I hope I provided some useful knowledge to you. And yeah, if need be, we can organize some more sessions on this. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Shami. Over to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Aru. It was definitely very insightful. As you can see, some chat messages coming in. So while I wait for questions in the chat, I was wondering if we can pick up two questions that we had received during our registration process. And I see Alice is here, so I'll mention your question, Alice. But if you want to unmute and elaborate, you're welcome to. And her question was, how do you effectively allocate and mobilize resources towards donor engagement? Alice, did you want to elaborate more on this, or um, have I mentioned it properly? All right. Aru, do you want to take that? How do
Yeah,
you?
yeah, definitely. I think for us as an NGO, we need to manage our funds, our budget. So, for every single project we implement, we get funds. We would allocate about 5% of that particular budget for resource mobilization and what we have done, right? So. We don't have investors, or we don't have money to allocate for the relationship building or donor engagement. So we get a particular project, say it's a $1 million project, we allocate 5% of that particular project to the business development activity, because it would have costed us so much effort to engage with the donors, to fly into to Europe, US, and do those engagement activities, separate team for writing proposals. That's all expensive. So we need to allocate a budget. And yeah, so I'm preparing the plan for next year, 2024. I just say, okay, how much fund I need for donor engagement, relationship building activities, and I need to use that budget. Yeah, I think that's how we do it in Assist. Yeah.
Great, thank you. The next one, I think we kind of covered it. You kind of covered it during the session, but maybe if you have any other examples, or if you have some more insights on what are some ways, or how do you effectively communicate your impact, right? This one was from Stacy, and I think we talked a little bit about impact reports and in inviting them to your events and
Yes.
brochures and things like that. But did you have anything else that you would add to it, or any specific examples of maybe something
Yeah.
unconventional that that was done, or?
Yeah, I think it's very important for the donor to visit your site. I think that's very important because sometimes they read in the reports what you submit, they can't feel it, but the moment they come to the site and see what impact you have created, then they really appreciate it and they feel happy about how much their fund and grant could contribute, and they also know it kind of increases your reputation. It has been used for the right purpose and you're doing it well. So we encourage as much as possible donor site visits. Sometimes they're very far off in Europe. I'm based in Vietnam, but I do keep asking them, are you coming down? We would like to show you our results. Are you coming down? I think that has been very useful. Um, Actual donor visiting and seeing the beneficiaries is very important. Um, Apart from that, yes, if regularly updating small videos, photographs of visit. You visit a site, you met a beneficiary, you could just put a nice picture, take a nice picture, share it. Because we are moving into the world of, short messaging, chats, and sometimes the emails and longer reports are not working anymore. But
Right.
I think always this digital media use is very important. You communicate and leverage on it. Um, Creating videos, photos, posting it on social media uh, is very important. And then sharing with your donors, I think, is also key. Yeah. Those has really helped us a lot with, maintaining our reputation and the client, the donor trusting us. We do it quite often. We do it very well in Assist. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. I see there is a question from, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it properly, Letaj. And I think the question is more from a startup perspective, but maybe you could expand it to ESOs as well. What are some of the most important challenges that one should focus on? And, Letaj, please feel free to unmute and elaborate if you wish to.
Good day. This is good day this side of South Africa. Basically, as a startup, one is challenged with making a lot of applications, and I'm grateful that you have pointed out the mapping, which has actually enlightened me further on how best I can approach the matter. The question is sometimes the donor would come back to you and say, unfortunately, you did not succeed. And obviously, you have indeed indicated that one has got to try and find some good questions to explore as to why you were rejected. To that extent, it becomes imperative that one gets to learn from your perspective, your examples of how you actually were managed to overcome that situation. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the donor world, I think we need to always accept this rejection message. We receive a lot. I'm so used to it. You would have put a lot of effort, and the simple answer is we received a lot of applications. Sorry, unfortunately, we are not able to fund you. Yes, I would encourage you to write back and ask, can we have a little bit more feedback on where it went wrong. But in most of the cases, they would not respond because they would have received 100 or 200 of applications. And if everybody is asking, I think it would be very difficult for them. Yeah, I would not, if they're a donor and there was a clear grant competition and there was a deadline, maybe during that period they are very busy and they are not able to respond to you because of conflict of interest and other protocols. They're not able to give feedback. But you may want to engage with them after that funding period is over or that competition is over. You might want to say, contact the same person. Hey, we applied for this. Unfortunately, we were rejected, but can I have some more insights, so that next time when we apply, we could be winning. And there are chances that they might respond and you might have a meeting. And that's the time you might get to understand a little bit more why you failed and whether your partnership strategy was, uh, or whether you applied alone or you had a partner or you did not have a partner. There might be a lot of other reasons. Yeah. Um, um, yeah, for me, there could be several reasons which the donors may not tell it in black and white in emails because they are not allowed to. But when you communicate, they may want to share it with you. Some of the donors, for example, from Germany, they are open to EU applicants or from most of the EU. But if the funding is from Germany, they're like, we would like to welcome more German applicants. They may not be very open to it, but they may favor their country. Then you may, then Assist, what we do is we look for German company partners and we apply through the German company, not through, though the application is very open. So you might get those kind of insights. Other ways, look at all the possible projects they have funded in South Africa in the past, and then look at trying to go and meet who have won the project, right? Maybe you could try to talk to them and see uh, if you can get some insights through already awarded projects. So I think that's also other way of, overcoming the challenges you mentioned. Yeah.
Thank you, Aru. All right, so maybe we can talk a little bit about, and I don't see more questions, so I'm just gonna ask a question while I wait for more. So if you were to pick the top 3 or 5, or the top do's and don'ts, right? The most common mistakes that are made that we should watch out for, right? What would those be when it comes to relationship building with funders, both the mistakes, the do's and the don'ts?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I'll start with don'ts, I think, which you should not do, and it's very important. I think it's about you should never make a project. I would say the project should be managed well. That's very important. If you don't manage the project well and you're not able to finish it on time within the donor requirements, then you lose your credibility. It's very important that the you make sure the project doesn't go wrong. Yeah. I can put in do's and don'ts. Do means I will say manage the project well and make sure it's reported properly. You complete it on time and you, as much as possible, you meet the donor requirements, deadlines. Very, very important. By that way, I'm able to build a very nice rapport with the client and they start to trust you. And yeah, so make sure your first project, is done well and they like you. In between, if something goes wrong in the project, it's always important to update them. You feel that the project is going to delay because of some reasons, unavoidable reasons, you better communicate to them 6 months ago before the project ends and I need an extension. That's still okay. Instead, you cannot just say, I didn't finish the project. Sorry, we need, at the last moment, you're saying we didn't complete, we need time. So I think communication, project management is very important to that rapport building. So I would say it as, yeah, do means do it. In the do's, I would say, please manage your project well. Second, very important is the communication visibility. It's very, very important. And I could see Assist, we have been doing a lot, but just last 5 years is where we were active in CNV. Before that, we did a lot of projects. We did not communicate. We were just happy with the funds we received. We did our project, we finished. But when we started actively putting a CNV team, CNV strategy, that made a big difference on again, increasing your credibility, proper assets and documents, right? We call visibility assets. It could be videos, it could be your social media posts, it could be reports, quarterly newsletters, what I was saying. I think that's very important, and I think engagement with the donors and trying to maintain that relationship, building credibility. I think that's very important. So those are, I would say, some of the do's. Don'ts, I think I would just say that, ensure that you don't have problems on the financial management of the project. The project is managed well, accounted well. So yeah, so don't mess with that. The financial management is very important. It kind of builds your credibility again. Yeah, and then I would say always I would say don't lose heart in, like, don't lose your passion, motivation to keep applying. For the donor, even you get rejections, I think you should continue to apply. If you have built a good rapport, there could be many reasons for a donor not accepting your proposals. With the same donor I'm mentioning, the German ones, we keep applying. Sometimes we get rejected, but then we apply again. Maybe the proposal was not good. So yeah, just keep applying. If you have built a rapport with the rapport with that particular client, or a good relationship with the donor. Yeah, I think those are something which really comes to my mind. But very important, as I said, please do personally engage your donor by inviting them to the project events, honoring them, showing them that you really value them, right? That's very important. So I think those are some key strategies Assist and myself we have used. And I think the top most important is communication. Communication on time, quick communication is very important. Quick feedback is very important. Yeah. Always we learn a lesson. We always use a key philosophy or strategy in Assist. It's actually the what I could say. It's actually the quick which eats the large. Yeah, that's what we say. You could be a small organization and you're competing with a larger organization, but it's about how quick you are in responding to proposals. It's always the quick which wins the larger ones, right? It's not that they're large. Sometimes the large companies, large organizations, they might be very slow in responding because of the bureaucracy or whatever it is. But it's always the quick that wins. And I think Assist, we have grown like that. And it's about quick communication, quick updates. I think communication is very, very important. You need to find a way to keep active communication with your donor. It's important. And yeah.
Awesome, thank you. I do not see any more questions, and we have come up on time. So I would like to thank Aru for such a fantastic session, wonderful insights on the topic. I think it comes very timely, given everybody's planning for 2024. I would just request a few minutes of our participants' time. We're going to launch a poll, and I just wanted to again, thank you all for joining. And coming up tomorrow, we have a series, part 2 of our 3-part series, which is called Purpose and a Paycheck. This is specifically focusing on careers in impact investing. We had a prior one on impact incubation, and one's coming up in January, which is impact entrepreneurship. So this is mainly for young professionals or graduates who are looking for a career in impact. Other than that, through our poll, we would like to know how we can, you wanted to engage further with the network. We also encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn, check out our website, as I said, at Pollinate Impact. We are focused, or we are committed to helping you bridge this gap, in access to funding. We have these capacity building workshops. We have, as Aru mentioned, we have perfect incubators, perfecting your pitch to funders. And this is where you can actually work on how do you tailor your pitch, how do you make your presentation, and then get direct feedback from funders in order to get that perfect. And we also have our weekly grant and funding opportunities. We help you form, the network helps you form these consortia that Aru has been talking about. So if you would like to know more about our membership, please visit our website. I'm going to paste copy our in the chat our social media handles and our email IDs. So please do reach out to us. We'd love to have a chat and see how you can engage with us. And yeah, thank you. Thank you again for joining. Tell a friend, tell a colleague, bring them to the next session. If we don't see you tomorrow, we are going to see you in the new year with more of these sessions. And we hope to see you in the new year. Happy holidays, happy New Year. And thank you, Aru. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And
Thank
thank
you.
you, AssistAsia. Yeah, it was a really, really wonderful session.
Thank you.